Hello everybody, it's Dr. Stuart A. Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast for St. Patrick's Day week of 2018. So the middle of March 2018. And I am in the process of preparing to leave tomorrow. Probably be gone by the time you all see this. And so I didn't have a lot of time to prepare a lot of news, but I do have some interesting stories to briefly tell you about, if that's okay with you.
With me?
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
I don't know, is it?
Are you going to be happy?
No, I'm never happy.
Oh,
How could anyone be happy living on this planet?
Because you have to find your own happiness.
Yes, it's in another galaxy.
Okay.
Anyway, here I will talk to you about Dr. Stephen Hawking, who died at the age of 76 years old, and interestingly, 7 plus 6 is 13. But, even more interestingly, he died on March 14th, which is Pi Day, March 3, 14, 14, 3.14, which is pi, for those of you who are mathematicians and scientists and physicists. It's a very difficult English word, you know. Anyway, not only is March 14 Pi Day, but it was Einstein's birthday.
What a coincidence.
Gee, what a coincidence that he died at 7613 is the number. March 14th, Pi Day, and Einstein's birth. You cannot be more, what a coincidence.
That's what I said.
Wow, who'd have thought? So that obviously is some kind of a programming trigger or ritual day. And the other interesting thing about him is, as people know, he had ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, and a disease which atrophies the muscles and so on of the body so they can't move and speak and so on. And such people generally cannot live past their 20s, maybe 30s, but he was 76. How is this possible?
Yeah, that's like
how is it? It's not
beyond.
Even, it's unheard of. Unheard of. Of course, there are conspiracy stories going around that he really died a long time ago, and this was a robot.
That's possible.
Who would know anyway? You know, just
would know.
Artificial voice that would come out of him anyway. So who knows?
Very highly possible.
So, and of course, there's been a lot of controversy on the news and tweets and things like this about him, which some are not very nice, but you know, I leave that up to all of you to decide what is going on. Another very interesting thing that happened on basically the same day is Vanessa Trump, the wife of Donald Trump Jr., filed for divorce. Who saw that coming?
Maybe they're setting a precedent for the next Trump.
And what's even more surprising, and they have 5 children, and they said that the divorce would be uncontested. So, translation, before they got married, she signed a prenup, which gives her either nothing or whatever she's going to ask for. So she don't care.
No, it's already been decided.
It's already decided. She probably couldn't wait. They probably said, please wait till my father gets into the office and then wait a year and blah, blah. So she's like, 1 year, I'm out of here. Sayonara.
I'm sure she doesn't care.
I'm sure he must be as pleasant to live with as his father.
But you know, the rumor is that he's really a transgendered woman.
No.
Yes, which makes...
everybody is.
Which makes her a transgendered man.
She don't look like that to me.
That's telling you.
I'm telling you, you can't be everybody on the earth like that.
Only the global handlers, according to what everybody says on the internet, and that's got to be true.
Speaking of those things, Hillary Clinton was in India on vacation, and she was videoed falling down the steps of a temple in India, not once, but twice, falling down on her butt. And then the next day, she fell in the bathtub of a hotel and broke her wrist. Somebody needs to get her bumpers or a walker or something, balloons around her.
Well, how many other times
dangerous.
did she fall that was not
Well, I'm about to say that she fell down a lot during the campaign.
I remember.
You know, and then she complained she had the flu and she couldn't breathe. But she's been falling down like forever. She's like a weeble.
But I told you she has an implant. They push a button and down she goes.
Is that what you did to me? Because I've been falling a lot. Anyway, speaking of falling, as we know, this week there was the collapse of a bridge at Florida International University. What I find interesting is like it's an 8-lane highway in the university. How big is this place? It's like gigantic.
That the university?
Yeah, that was on the 8. Wow, that is a lot, and it's near Miami, and it's called Instant Bridge because it was installed within 6 hours. In 6 hours, they put the bridge up. Bing, was
I
up.
think instantly it fell as well.
Well, it fell. It collapsed during a stress test where they were tightening cables. So here's my question: why was traffic allowed to pass under it during a stress test?
Yeah.
Because in the past, during such tests, bridges have collapsed. So wouldn't safety dictate, let's close traffic until we test this thing?
It must be another ritual.
Yes, and not only that, the company that was involved called FIG, F-I-G-G, FIG.
That's like a biblical term.
Mm-hmm. And they have had safety issues previously. They had built a bridge at Fort Lauderdale Airport that also collapsed in 2016. And they put a bridge in Virginia that collapsed in 2012. So, okay, you're in charge in the university of a building. Oh, let's choose this company. They've had 2 bridges fall down already. Let's put another one up
Then that
by them.
sounds to me it was planned. Because
Brilliant.
that way they knew that this company knew how to collapse bridges.
And so far, 6 people are known dead. It's possible as many as 10. They have not found all the bodies. And so, obviously, again, this was done on purpose.
Absolutely.
And here's something very interesting that just came out on the news today. You remember that Argentinian submarine that vanished last November?
Right.
And they said it was on it was doing tests and things like this. Well, as it turns out, Argentina admitted today that the sub that disappeared last November was spying on the Falkland Islands, which Argentina claims as part of its territory, but Britain says, no, we shall have the Falklands, even though it is on the other side of the world from us, and we have no right to be there. So anyway, before they disappeared, the crew texted to their respective families that they were being chased by a British helicopter and a Chilean naval vessel. So here's my question. Here's Argentina. Here's the Andes. Chile's on this side. This is Argentinian water. Why would a Chilean naval vessel be chasing them in Argentinian water?
Well, there's a lot more to this story, which we've said right when we reported it, than meets the eye, obviously.
Yes, and also the Argentinians said an explosion was detected. The sub was never found, even though it was in very shallow water. Under the category of Malaysian Airlines 370.
Yeah, how can you lose a sub, right?
Or gigantic airliner.
Exactly. Okay, my turn?
Your turn.
Okay, speaking of Mr. Trump and his affair with Stormy Daniels.
Stormy weather.
Now, you do know that's not her real name. Her real name is Stephanie Clifford.
I know.
And
I like Stormy better.
Yeah, of course, because that's a trigger for people, and it's an anger type of a word. So it
That
pulls
should
us
have been
out
my name.
within people. But anyway, what was interesting is that his Trump's lawyers now have obtained a restraining order against her from speaking publicly about their alleged affair.
Well, duh.
It bars her from sharing confidential information, and of course Mr. Trump says all these allegations are false.
Of course, it's fake news.
Yeah. So anyway, it says Stormy, a.k.a. Stephanie Clifford, said this agreement that supposedly she signed about not saying anything was not valid because they didn't sign it, which I believe you reported on. However, she still says that she wants to pursue this allegation.
Of course she does. She'll be very rich and famous,
And
won't
she can write a book and get billions of
And
dollars.
movies and whatnot.
Yeah. And speaking of Mr. Trump wants to have wants the U.S. to have its own space force. Did you read that
They do
one?
already.
No, he's not according to what he's saying. He said
No, they do. They have already.
But he's claiming we don't yet. He said which would be like the Army and the Navy, but for space.
Duh.
Apparently, the idea hit him when he was talking to the Myanmar military base in San Diego
It
last
just
week.
hit him.
It just hit him. He said, quote, "Space is a war-fighting domain just like the land, air, and sea."
Well, that's a good way of looking at it.
I
That's
was
a positive perspective.
I was saying the other day, because we're doing a tremendous amount of work in space, maybe we need a new force.
Well, what tremendous
We'll
amount of work
call
are we doing in
it
space?
the Space Force. And I was not really serious. And then I said, what a great idea. Maybe we'll have to do that.
Yeah, Space Force. Let's see, it's in space, it's a force. Space Force! He's brilliant.
Brilliant.
He thought of that by his little old self.
Yes,
And Melania didn't even help him.
And speaking of Trump, let's move to the Vice President, Mr. Pence.
Oh, yes.
Now, apparently, at some point, which I do believe I reported on this, but just in case you missed it, that Mr. Pence said that Jesus talks to him.
Talks to me, too. He lives just down the block. It's Jesus, really.
Now, what's interesting about this particular story is that people who hear voices are generally called mentally ill, and we, of course, talk about programmed people hearing
Yes.
voices, right? So, Joy Behar, who is
she's
on
one of my
The View,
favorites. She has the brain
apparently
IQ of a flea.
said some nasty things about Mr. Pence's Christian faith. So he called and talked to her, then she called and talked to him and apologized.
Oh, really?
And he gives her a lot of credit for doing this.
Of course he did.
And what she had said, and of course now they're repeating this over and over for you, is, quote, "It's one thing to talk to Jesus, it's another thing when Jesus talks to you. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct, hearing voices."
I hear them all the time.
Now, they talk a lot about these shooters and so forth. They hear voices in their head that say that they're supposed to do it. These are programmed people. So now, instead of being called a mental illness, they're going to start to say that's okay if you hear voices.
Well, of course it is. I'm hearing right now. It told me to say that.
Right. And speaking of programming, you might have seen this story because this is all over the internet, and there's a reason, because it has to do with twinning programming. And I've been talking about all the twinning stories that have been up last time. It was psychic twins and so forth. Well, did you see this one about the astronaut Scott Kelly, who no longer has the same DNA as his identical twin?
I heard about that.
Yep, it's called the Twins Study, very original. The Twins Study.
It's like Space Force.
Yeah,
Twin study.
Yeah, by NASA. And apparently, let's see, Scott Kelly spent over 500 days in space overall.
Wow, that's a long time.
And there was one single mission. He was actually on the International Space Station for 342 days.
My goodness.
And now his brother Mark, who is also a retired astronaut, is his identical twin with the same DNA. But when Mr. Scott returned to Earth, apparently most of his DNA did, except for about 7%.
Oh, only 7%.
And though, no, yeah, exactly. And so those changes are still in effect 2 years later. So apparently they wanted this twin study to see how a long-haul mission to Mars would affect people. Because,
You know who also did twin studies?
Who?
Hitler.
Ah, surprise, surprise, right?
Same people.
Yeah. And then another very, I'm going to say, explosive topic these days, which is racism, which continues to divide and conquer and does not seem to stop going away. To me, this is the beginning of the Civil War.
It's already started.
Because this is North against South, one race against another, and what's really interesting to me is how that they're carrying on now against white people and calling this, in Canada, schools, believe it or not, they had a poster campaign about white privilege. And they had
Supporting it or not supporting it?
Well, let's listen. There's the superintendent, Teresa Downs, who is a female, white female, standing in this poster with her picture, and she says, quote, "I have unfairly benefited from the color of my skin.
Oh, poor thing.
White privilege is not acceptable." Now, it kind of sounds like somebody standing up going, "I'm an alcoholic." You know, "Oh, I have unfairly benefited." I don't think so. You know, everybody needs to have benefits based upon merit.
Exactly correct.
So what's interesting to me...
I don't care what color they are.
No, we don't... No, color doesn't matter, race doesn't matter,
But
gender
what is
doesn't
wrong
matter.
is reverse discrimination, where certain people of, let's say, white race or other races are discriminated because they are that race.
And we have found that because we identify as white. So one of our sons...
Even though you're really not.
So one of our sons, when he was going to university, was applying for something called an undergraduate research opportunity. And all of those opportunities went to females and people of color. And so that year...
Hey, listen, I don't like that term because I have a color too.
Does that offend you?
Yes, it does actually.
Blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, is that a Hispanic? Asians, those people and the females all got these. They would apply to one school and they got in. The white males at his school would apply to 10, 15 schools.
And they were smart.
And they were rejected.
And people who were of other races who were not so smart, and it doesn't matter what race they were, because they were white, stupid people too. But they were people who were of other races who had less grades, less intelligence, and they got in because of their race, which is not fair.
Yeah, so our son spent his summer at the university taking a physics class with only other white males because all the white males in his program would not be taken.
That's discrimination right there.
Exactly. So there is not white privilege, let me tell you.
Absolutely not.
Especially if you're a male. If you're a female, that puts you ahead of a white male, but behind a black female and behind a black Latino or a Latino female and behind an Asian female.
Confusing.
Yes. But that's what it is. So anyway, the University of Ontario Institute of Technology set up posters encouraging students to check their privilege using a list of privileges such as Christian, white, heterosexual, and male.
So those are bad things.
Those are bad things. And so the parents were upset because it said now their children are feeling bad if they're white and especially if they're male.
How ridiculous is that?
So then 74 posters were put up. And then they even had one of them that featured a white man alongside the quote that said, "I have to acknowledge my own privilege and racist attitudes."
You know, he just needs a smack in the head.
So the point being is, this is up in Canada. This is just the start of it.
That alone, Canada, say no more stupidity.
Yeah, they are.
They have a prime minister who dressed like a guru to go to India. That was brilliant.
Yeah, and he wore Space Force
socks. And
then
look, I could stand on my fingertips, see?
And Space Force socks.
Yeah, he's absolutely moron.
Programmed bizarre.
And his wife?
So the point being is this is divide and conquer. And so we have people, even, I'll say the trolls, because I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, that are coming onto our YouTube channel and calling us racist.
You know what? I like the real trolls, the little short, hairy ones. They're nicer.
Yeah, they are nicer. But the point is that we are only telling you what's going on out there. It's up to you to accept people as they are and stop putting colors and all these things on there.
You should go by what you do and the kind of person you are. I don't care what color, religion, I don't care. Just be a good person.
One of my favorite stories was about George Washington Carver, who was born a slave, and he was the one who experimented with a peanut and brought all kinds of interesting inventions into the world. So your humble beginnings, I'm sorry, it's not against you. Sometimes that's what makes you strong. So you need to think about these things. So anyway, I could go, again, many hours on this topic, but I will not. The next story, which is one I don't really address too often, but I do keep you updated on what's going on in the news, and that's pedophilia. Because I tell you, and I continue to tell you, that in the New World religion, pedophilia will be practiced. Well, in Australia, the most powerful clergy, Archbishop of Melbourne, Dennis Hart, says that the Catholic practice of confession is satisfactory for dealing with pedophilia in the church, as it helps priests absolve their own guilt after sexually abusing children.
Wait. So they can abuse a child, go into confess to themselves, and it's fine.
And they absolve their own guilt.
That's also brilliant.
He says that he's prepared to be jailed for failing to report child sex abuse by the Catholic pedophile priests. And he's willing to serve prison time. Now, if you are a teacher or a counselor and you hear of these things, you have to report it to the proper authorities.
Yes, but religious has a special,
it's an absolutely sacrosanct communication of a higher order. So therefore, these people are above your country's laws, right? He said that the clergy are not obligated to report crimes to the police, and disciplinary proceedings for criminal activity by members of the Catholic Church are handled internally by canon law, which operates independently of the regular legal procedure. Right? He says confession in the Catholic Church is a spiritual encounter with God through the priest. You can't encounter God yourself if you're Catholic. You have to go through the priest. He says it's a fundamental part of the freedom of religion recognized in the law of Australia and many other countries. It must remain so here in Australia. Outside of Catholic confession, all offenses against children must be reported to the authorities, and we're absolutely committed to doing this, so they'll do that. But
as long as you don't confess in church.
Exactly. So,
well, there was a story last week about a man in Erie, Pennsylvania who went to the Catholic Church to confess they murdered his wife, and the priest called the police and had him arrested.
So what's the difference? Why won't they do this with the pedophiles, right?
But technically, the priest didn't have to do that.
Well, he's now probably in trouble with canon law because he wasn't supposed to do that. And in California, a judge has taken 15 years off the sentence of a pedophile convicted of raping a 3-year-old child. The reason is because the rapist claims he didn't mean to harm the child. Mm-hmm. So this was a 20-year-old man. The judge said that this would be cruel and unusual punishment if he had the maximum prison sentence. He said the girl's mother was unable to get into the locked garage when she was looking for the child, and then he covered the toddler's mouth so the toddler couldn't scream for the mother. And then when he let the child out of the garage and the child complained of pain, that's when the mother found out what happened. So the judge said in his decision that Mr. Rojano did not seek out or stalk the victim. He was playing video games and she wandered into the garage. He inexplicably became sexually aroused but did not appear to be consciously to intend to harm the victim when he sexually assaulted her, a 3-year-old, right?
This is what the judge said?
This is what the judge should be abused. Although serious and despicable, this does not compare to a situation where a pedophilic child predator preys on an innocent child. To me, it's the same. I'm sorry.
Where was this?
This was in California.
Too much pot.
There was no violence or callous disregard for the victim's well-being. I don't think so.
Really? Maybe they should rake the judge and see what he says.
The prosecutor said they strongly disagreed with the judge's outrageous decision to reduce Mr. Rojano's prison sentence and plan to appeal the sentence. So, again,
sounds like someone was paying the judge.
Pedophilia, and then one more pedophilia story because it's all important because there's more and more of this type of thing coming up. This was actually reported back in December, but it just came to my attention that there was a Massachusetts priest who was suspected of raping 26 children. He actually admitted to doing that. So, what happened? He was under canon law, so to punish him, they sent him to a retreat for 30 days to think about what he had done. Mm-hmm. And he assaulted children from the ages of 5 to 11 years old, and the reason that the Catholic Church said that it wasn't such a big deal was because the children consented to the rape. So they're not calling it rape. So 5 to 11 years old.
Could they say that?
So the Vatican said it was a church matter and told families there was no need for the police. And the Vatican Church's official thing was he didn't rape them. They all consented to it. 5 to 11 years old, 26 children.
If they did that to my child or grandchild, I would go and kill them.
Okay, so that's what happened. So that's what happened. So somehow or another, he didn't show up for Mass. His brother found him, and they believe that more than one person did this. That he had a blade in the chest, his genitals were removed, and a machete up his rectum.
You know what? That's justice.
And of course, now they're looking for those people.
No, they shouldn't.
So even the parents, before all this stuff happened, they tried to appeal it. They went directly to the Pope to appeal it, and they didn't get from Mr. Kind. You know, everybody's saying how wonderful Pope Francis is, but they got a letter back from the church telling them that the case is now closed.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, now it is closed, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, pedophilia, I'm telling you, it's...
Because he consented to his own murder.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And now this is a little older story, but every year around Easter time, we're only a couple years away from Easter, which this year, of course... Couple of weeks, is on April Fool's Day. Isn't that interesting? But there was a BBC documentary back in 2011 that actually claimed that Jesus Christ was a Buddhist monk. And that he was not actually crucified, but he traveled for many years and finally was laid to rest in Srinagar, Kashmir.
Where have you heard that before?
Well, this next part was interesting because they claim, this BBC documentary, that in 1887, a Russian doctor named Nicholas Notovich went to India, Tibet, and Afghanistan to write the book called The Unknown Life of Christ. And while he was recovering in a monastery from a broken leg, the Tibetan lamas there gave him some books called The Life of Saint Issa, and in this book the Vedic scholars claim that Jesus went there, they called him Issa, and studied from the age of 13 to 29.
Yes.
So anyway, it goes on to say that he was greater than the Dalai Lamas and so on. So that's kind of an interesting story. If you have a chance to check out that link. Speaking of freedom of speech, which we know here in the U.S., we're going to offend everybody about everything. There was a man who was at a Christianity class at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and he was disciplined for saying that there were only 2 genders. He said that after a 15-minute TED Talk by transgender ex-pastor Paula Stone Williams, who is discussing the reality of mansplaining, sexism from men, and male privilege, the professor asked the women in the class to share their thoughts. And then when no women spoke up, this man spoke up who challenged the professor on biology and the gender wage gap. He told the class the official view of biologists is that there are only 2 genders. So he was disciplined for classroom disruption. And now this young man says that Ingalls said that's his name, that what the professor did was unconstitutional, and my professor is violating my First Amendment rights because of the fact that my views and ideology is different from hers. He's claiming he doesn't see this as a transgender issue, a women's issue, wage issue, but a free speech issue, and an example of the constant misuse of intellectual power at universities, which can happen because that's what they do. They start imprinting the students first. Okay, next story, more New World religion. I've been telling you that bestiality is going to be part of that when we get there. And some of you might have seen Shape of Water movie, and there's been a lot of controversy about that. Well, guess what happened? Huffington Post pulled up journalist Malcolm J. Brenner, who was known in the 70s, that's almost 50 years ago, for his alleged romantic relationship with a dolphin. And they wanted him to review The Shape of Water, which tells the story, of course, of a mute woman who falls in love with a fish-like creature with human features. Now, he said that although both his story and the movie are about a human having a romantic relationship with a non-human, he can't relate to that. He thinks this is a double standard of the way that society treats humans who are sexually attracted to animals. He said, I'm sure there are a lot of the good liberals who criticize me for making love with a dolphin who love this film because the hero was a featherless biped. Now, this man, who is a journalist, describes himself as a zoophile, not a bestialist, because he's someone who has tender and or caring emotions for their animal partner. Remember, he wrote an autobiographical novel in 2010 called Wet Goddess about his experience with the animal, and then later he became the subject of the documentary called Dolphin Lover. He said that while the Academy Award-winning film portrays similar themes to the ones in his book, the overall fantastical nature of the film makes it hard for him to relate to. He sees the public's positive reception of the film that shows a human and a non-human creature having sex as proof of double standards. When I was really attracted to her, this is what he says about his former lover, Dolly the dolphin, was what I was really attracted to was her attention and the intellectual way she challenged me, not her appearance. Over time, I came to find it flattering, especially when nobody else was paying any attention to me. And to me, that's the crux of the matter right there. That's why people are going to animals instead of humans, or maybe, like we've talked about, a robot. When asked if he hopes his attraction to animals will be more accepted by society after the movie's reception, he said, quote, I would like to think that society will become less religious because the prohibitions in Leviticus are the only conceivable basis for any laws against bestiality. I can't see that my boffing my dog has any effect on society, good or ill, as long as I'm not hurting her or abusing her. Laws against animal cruelty ought to be sufficient without criminalizing the act of interspecies sex. So interspecies sex, I think, is going to be a buzzword the more we move along.
Did he say having sex with a dog is okay?
Yeah, as long as they don't hurt them.
Yes, it would hurt them.
I don't know, because I don't know anything about it, thank God.
Well, you could just think about it.
I don't want to think about
that
it.
Doesn't make sense.
Sorry, I don't like to think about it. It's disgusting.
Well, you're reading it.
No, but I have to tell them what's going on out there. Because this is New World Religion programming that's coming up for you. And like I said, this story with this guy, this was in the 70s. This is almost 50 years old, and they're still dragging it up. And then aliens. Just a quick alien story, because this is a professor of computer science and biophysics at St. Petersburg Federal University and Russia, of course, Dr. Konstantin Korokov. He is claiming that the mummies, that mummified creatures, I should say, found with elongated skulls in Peru are actually aliens. And of course, they have 3 fingers. And they also said that this particular doctor was widely criticized in 2008 when he claimed to have created a camera that could photograph the human soul. And one more mind control and programming story. Now, y'all know about the cloud, and I've talked to you about that a little bit. And I think last week was when we talked about how they're talking about putting your mind up into the cloud. Well, now we have a Silicon Valley billionaire. He's only 32 years old. However, he has paid $10,000 so he can be killed, so the contents of his brain can be digitally uploaded and preserved forever.
And he knows that's going to work.
Well, I guess he's figuring by the time he gets to that point of where they will kill him, this will be physician-assisted suicide. The process is 100% fatal, but they have to do it according to the story while the brain is still alive.
Well, duh.
So, if that you, I guess, want to die at some point in your life, and you go to one of the states that has physician-assisted suicide, they're claiming that they can upload your consciousness via your brain into this cloud. So anyway, he says it's a special embalming process for the brain. It's simulated onto a computer, and this was written up in MIT Technology Review. And they're saying that more and more scientists are becoming interested in uploading human consciousness into computers or storing it in the cloud. So we'll see what happens. And in the meantime, this company, this startup company called Nectome, has a large federal grant and is collaborating with MIT neuroscientists. Its embalming technique just won an $80,000 prize for preserving a pig's brain so well that every synapse inside it could still be seen with an electron microscope. So, lots of weird stuff coming on for humanity. I'm not sure. I mean, I personally think that's not a good thing, but that's where I'm at.
Well, I wouldn't want my brain preserved.
No, I wouldn't either. I think it's really a disgusting thing.
No.
Anyway, so what else? Oh, we want to tell them about our books. Mm-hmm. Stuart says, okay, you all want to get one of these. This is a great one. Blue Blood, True Blood, if you're interested. History, Aliens, Illuminati, Global Control, more True World History, which continues the story. It's utterly fascinating. More information will be given out in our September class, which we finally got those dates settled. Look at the website for that. Health and Healing, Hyperspace Helper, Hyperspace Plus, Healing Arcs and Types and Symbols, so you can control your own brain and nobody else will control it or upload it in a cloud for you. We have over here, specifically Mind Control Programming, The True Reality of Sexuality, very popular. 13 Cubed, also extremely popular. White L Legends, this is an interesting one, The Archetypal Story of Creation. This is fascinating. I won't tell you the details because you need to go online and read it. Just have out 2 children's books, one on auras, one on chakras. I've got 2 more coming out in the next couple of months to add to the series. And of course, everyone needs a copy of this for your library, Decoding Your Life, which of course is universal law. Remember, that's what the Illuminati use against you for negative purposes. You can study it and use it to enhance your own abilities for positive purposes. And affirmations, these are energetic tools, archetype sentences, so you can reprogram your brain positively, your mind, your brain, your soul. And you're taking off, right?
Yes, I'm leaving tomorrow.
That's right, for Boston. So if you're in the Boston area, March 18th, check out our website, Facebook pages, because it is a live event. I think we have seating available up to 100 people.
All right, go to hypertruths.com.
Yep, and you'll find the details of that. And then you have lots of things coming up as always. And then
I go to Houston.
Houston?
For something very private, and I cannot tell you till I get back.
It's a secret. And then what about Argentina?
I don't know. We'll see.
Argentina. Then we have our Italian trip coming up. Well, Turkish television in May. We have our Italian trip. We have 1 space left. So if you want to join a very eclectic group of people and have some fantastic discussions and find out about yourself up in the Alps of Italy, we're going to have a fabulous time. And Anything
That's
else?
it.
Yep. September Spectacular. That's the next one. The dates, watch for the announcement of that. So thank you very much for joining us. Like our Facebook pages, join our website memberships, like, comment, and share, subscribe. We appreciate all of your positive comments and feedbacks and everything that you know to add to what we know.
Bye for now.
Bye.